Imagine a dramatic late-night assault in Washington, D.C. that quickly becomes a national flashpoint. A young man, just 19, nicknamed Big Balls, previously part of the controversial Department of Government Efficiency DOGE, is beaten in a carjacking attempt. Within hours, former President Trump posts a bloody photo of him on social media, calls the city leadership incompetent, and threatens to federalize the entire district. He pledges to strip away home rule and assume control over a city of 730,000 residents. That one image and post catapulted a local crime story into a potential constitutional crisis. Early on August 3rd, Edward Coristine, known as Big Balls, stepped in to protect his partner during a carjacking in the upscale Logan Circle neighborhood. He was assaulted, suffered a concussion and broken nose, and lost his phone. Two 15-year-olds were arrested and charged. Turn Zero News 33. He had worked at DOGE, the high-profile tech-guided government initiative tied to Elon Musk, and had earned notoriety in circles associated with the Trump administration. Later that morning, Trump published the graphic photo and declared on Truth Social that if D.C. doesn't get its act together, he would federalize the city. He warned juvenile offenders as young as 14 should face adult charges. Elon Musk amplified those calls, retweeting federal control rhetoric. Ironically, official crime statistics show violent crime in Washington had declined 26% in 2025, continuing a post-pandemic reduction. Yet Trump and allies used Coristine's assault to highlight problems with juvenile justice, local leadership, and the city's sanctuary policies. Under D.C.'s 1973 Home Rule Act, residents elect a mayor and council, but Congress retains the authority to override local laws and budgets. Only Congress, not a president, can remove home rule, requiring legislation and overcoming a Senate filibuster. Trump claims he has vast executive power to step in. In late 2025, during a cabinet meeting, he asserted, "We have tremendous power at the White House to run places when we have to. We could run D.C., we'd run it so good." He hinted New York City could be next. He points to two executive tools: control over the D.C. National Guard and limited emergency authority to assume command of the Metropolitan Police during federal emergencies. Already, Trump established the D.C. Safe and Beautiful Task Force, positioning it to override city services on issues like graffiti, trash, and enforcement, citing the city's mismanagement as justification. Mayor Muriel Bowser and council members fired back swiftly. They said Trump's move was unconstitutional, politically opportunistic, and a threat to democracy in the Capitol. Eleanor Holmes Norton warned that only Congress can revoke home rule, and voters pay federal taxes but still lack voting representation in Congress. DOGE enters the picture as a parallel controversy. Under Musk's leadership, DOGE laid off tens of thousands of federal workers, gained control over Treasury payment systems, and centralized large parts of administrative authority. Critics called DOGE a shadow government, providing Musk unprecedented influence over governance. Multiple lawsuits argue that DOGE violated constitutional and statutory norms. Trump's threats to federalize D.C. were widely seen as pushing DOGE's power envelope. Pause here for a viewer check-in. If this deep dive matters to you and you want updates on how executive power is reshaping democracy in D.C., please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Now let's dig into the constitutional jealousy of home rule. Home rule evolved slowly. Prior to 1973, Congress directly governed D.C. budget, laws, and city administration under the Organic Act of 1871. Community activists and civil rights movements pushed for change. In 1973, the Home Rule Act established elected local government, though Congress still reviews legislation and budgets. The president appoints local judges, and the city remains under Congress's ultimate oversight. Many of D.C.'s attempts at autonomy have been overridden over the years. For example, Congress repealed city referendums on medical marijuana in 1998 and again in 2014, showing the fragility of city legislation. Trump's threat to federalize echoes earlier 1995 concerns, when Congress almost considered placing D.C. into receivership to avoid fiscal collapse. While that effort failed, critics now say Trump is reviving similar tactics to undermine democratic governance. Reviews of D.C.'s budget crisis show federal oversight would shift millions in administrative and financial responsibility back to Congress. In reaction, local leaders proposed novel resistance ideas. One radical option: potent future statehood via reunification with Maryland, effectively returning D.C. to overlapping state powers not under executive oversight. That concept stems from constitutional legal scholars outlining pathways through consolidation. Trump kept elevating the rhetoric. If D.C. doesn't shape up fast, he said, I may have to exert my powers and federalize this city. He called for juvenile age reform, mandatory life sentences for carjacking, and repressive policing. Critics say he is weaponizing one tragic incident to set broad precedent. The political reaction in Washington, D.C. has been intense. D.C. Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton called Trump's comments an affront to the democratic principle of local self-rule. Senate Democrats filed legal responses, and at least 2 bills, #Bowser Act, were introduced to protect D.C. autonomy from executive overreach. The bills aim to block any federal attempt to revoke home rule without voter approval. Legal experts argue that even invoking emergency police authority would be constitutionally risky. Lawyers specializing in D.C. oversight warn that using the National Guard to assume control of local police could violate posse comitatus-style restrictions and civil rights protections. So what are possible outcomes? 1. Local leaders agree to reforms: increase juvenile sentencing, emergency police funding, and push policy changes. Trump may call off federalization. 2. Congress introduces legislation to revoke Home Rule Act. But given Senate dynamics, mere repeal would unlikely pass. 3. Court battles over whether the president can temporarily assume control of city departments, such as police or administration. 4. DOGE-led executive move overrides city control over agencies under declared emergency authority. Likely faced with multiple lawsuits, / Whatever happens, the incident shows how a crime story becomes constitutional. Because in Washington, D.C., federal law trumps local power, and now that principle is being tested publicly. Trump turned one attack into a show of force over governance. Let's talk about public sentiment. A YouGov poll after Trump's post showed nearly 63% of registered voters in D.C. opposed federal intervention. Among Black or Hispanic residents, support dropped to 48%. Democratic voters overwhelmingly opposed it. Supporters, largely outside D.C., hailed Trump's toughness on crime. International press also commented. Analysts in Europe described the incident as further erosion of U.S. constitutional norms, while observers in Canada questioned why a Democratic capital could so easily become swept under executive ambition. Critics worry that if Trump succeeds in limiting D.C. autonomy, New York City or Chicago could be next. DOGE watchers say this is the latest escalation in Musk's project to centralize government power. Late 2024 and early 2025 reports showed expedited DOGE access to Treasury systems, job purges, and power accumulations that sparked multiple federal lawsuits. With Trump's threat to federalize D.C., DOGE is seen as testing executive dominance in urban centers. Through August, Congress faces pressure. D.C.'s budget is on the chopping block. The House has voted for over $1.1 billion in cuts, which Mayor Bowser claims will further degrade public services and justify Trump's threats. Meanwhile, pressure building in the Senate may stall or block full repeal of home rule. Make no mistake, federalizing D.C. is radical. For nearly 200 years, the balance between local and federal control in the capital has been maintained without major disruption. Trump's threat suggests that balance is unraveling, either temporarily or permanently. Let's reflect. One teen crime becomes the justification for expanding executive authority. What's the message? If local police can't offer safety, the president can step in, even overturn democratic institutions. Does protecting one citizen justify undermining democracy for hundreds of thousands? As voters watch these events unfold, tough questions about representation, governance, and democracy come front and center. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Should local governance be protected, even if crime rises? Or is federal intervention justified when local systems fail? How far is too far for executive reach? This story isn't over. It will likely unfold in Congress, the courts, City Hall, and maybe public protests in D.C. Every step, I'll keep you updated. Thank you for sticking through this critical examination. If you found it informative, once again click like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Your feedback helps shape these long-form deep dives.